different schools, there's many different lineages, that she's at the O'Hara, and so she's going to be talking more about the history of Ikebana and also of her particular school, and then do some demonstrations for us. So we welcome her today.
Thank you, and please raise your hand if I'm not speaking loud enough, because at Lewis Ginter, where we have our programs, our monthly programs, we have a real problem with people not hearing, even when we mic them. Thank you, Marion and the Rose Society, for contacting Ikebana of Richmond. We're happy to have the exposure and to share the art of Ikebana. I moved to Richmond about 30 years ago, and was looking for, well, I would go to the Maymont Flower and Garden Show, and Ikebana always had a beautiful display there, and I thought, when I retire, that's what I want to do. I want to take Ikebana classes and be a member of Ikebana. So that's what I did. We have about 137 members currently. We meet on the first Thursdays, usually at Lewis Ginter, from September to May, and often, or let's say once a year, at Maymont, where we usually do a cultural program. And this past year, we were at the VMFA in the Cheek Theater for a couple of programs, and that was quite elegant and very nice. So, but usually it's Lewis Ginter, which is a very appropriate partnership for us to have. Now, I'm going to, just to let you know what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a little background on what is Ikebana, you know, how did it develop, and then I'm going to do two basic arrangements, and as I do them, I'll talk about the characteristics of Ikebana and how it's differentiated from Western arranging. But I will say, with this caveat, that Ikebana is starting to use more flowers. It's not, and you know, so many of us just appreciate the simplicity of it, and we hate to lose that part of Ikebana. But it's practiced around the world. Ikebana International has global chapters, and in India they use beautiful exotic you know, materials to create arrangements. Here, in the school that I'm a member of, which is the O'Hara School, is more naturalistic. And we, you know, I get a lot of inspiration from walking through the park or woodland trails and that kind of thing, observing the way branches reach out, and I don't use a lot of flowers in my type of arranging. So, and there's a real emphasis on seasonality, and that goes all across Ikebana. It's very oriented towards seasonality. Not to say that we don't use, you know, anthurium or different kinds of things that we may order from Hawaii, but generally seasonality is a big inspiration for us. So what is Ikebana? What does it mean? And it's actually comprised of two characters, Ike, life or living, and Bana, which means flowers. So Ikebana means living flowers. And that's the way it's usually defined. However, I've also read a definition that really resonates with me, and that is creating new life in flowers. So if you go into the garden and pick a flower or a branch and bring it inside, put it in a vase, and select a space in your home to place it, you're really creating new relationships. So that is, in giving that flower and that branch new life. So that resonates with me. So anyway, Ikebana, living flowers. We don't use plastic flowers or silk flowers or that sort of thing. Sometimes dried material. And I will say that some of the modern, very modern schools like Sogetsu may use any number of things that are not natural materials because they're very kind of sculpturally oriented. And it was founded by a Japanese sculptor. So Ikebana, as Marion said, there are hundreds of schools of Ikebana. In Richmond, we have 4 that are taught, and or members who are certified to teach in those particular schools. The school that I study is a modern school. It was established in the second half of the 19th century when Japan opened up to trade with the West. That happened mid-19th century, and all of a sudden, these flowers started, that the Japanese had never seen, started coming into the country, and it just created, that was a big innovation. That started a lot of innovation in Ikebana. But prior to that, Buddhism, which began in India, and with offerings on the altar for the Buddha, that was really sort of, we look at that as kind of the beginning, the seed of Ikebana, and then as Buddhism spread into China and Korea, and then to Japan, by the 8th or 6th century, basically, it changed, but it basically was a Buddhist, deeply rooted in Buddhism. And so in Japan, the art of Ikebana was an offering to in the temple, and it was taught by monks, and it was studied by monks. And not until about the 16th century did it become more secular, and the arrangements became more elaborate. And in a traditional Japanese home, you would have a little niche called a tokonoma, and that's where you would put your arrangement, and you might have a scroll or calligraphy hanging behind the arrangement. I don't know why I'm looking at this. You should be looking at this. It's on a turntable, so anyway, that prior to that, or when it was basically taught until about the 18th century, we used tall containers because that was what fit on the altar in the temples. And then in the homes, they used tall containers. Now, when I said that Japan opened to the West for trade, then that was in the late 1800s or mid 1800s, these new flowers were coming in. So they didn't display very well in these tall containers. So the headmaster, or the man that established the Ohara School, said, hey, I'm going to design a ceramic that's a low bowl, and it's going to be for moribana arrangements. Moribana, I love this, means piling flowers on. Now, I've never quite understood that because we don't just pile flowers on in a container like this. But, and I think that translation, I really kind of question it, that piling. But it does, these low bowls, you do display flowers and branches differently than if it's in just a tall, kind of somber container. So, landscape arrangements became popular, and they're wonderful. And I study another school too that does nothing but landscapes, and they take forever, but they're so beautiful and they're so much fun to create. Whoops, I should put my hand in my pocket. So let's see. Ikebana is so rooted in this Buddhism, an aspect that I think has really still, you find with Ikebana, is meditation. Pardon?
Is there a yin and a yang to this Ikebana?
Well, it could be. But we don't use that necessarily as a principle, but certainly in Taoism, that would have been probably in, Chinese design, been very important. He was asking about yin and yang. So I've had classes with teachers who will want to spend a few minutes before they start the class where everyone is very still and quiet and settles. And I find that very helpful for before doing an arrangement in a class. But, we're Americans. We love to just talk, American ladies, in a class. And so it's hard to get that kind of quiet and settled way. But sometimes we really try. And, our lives are so busy, rushing from this to that. And I never could have done Ikebana when I was working. I just don't think it would have blended, or maybe it would have been nice. It would have brought me a little more quiet time. But it really helps us to settle into the moment of listening, and this sounds kind of silly, but listening to the material. And we listen to it because it doesn't always want to do what we want it to do. Like, I want to do this type of arrangement, and I want this flower. No, they kind of have their own way. And so sometimes you can be in control, and sometimes not, especially if you're not real, skilled. But the reverence that the Japanese and maybe in other Asian cultures have for nature really is, I think it really enters into the simplicity aspect of Ikebana, because they don't need to have a bunch of different flowers. They don't need to have everything massed together. It's more, a little more space, more lines and angles, and focusing on one particular flower that reaches out. So, and to me, that really resonates. So I'm going to go ahead and begin an arrangement. I'm using a turntable because I like to place the flower or the branch so that I can see, and then I'll turn it around for you to look at. Now this is the shushi. This is the main line of this arrangement. And you call it, in some other schools, they call it the shin line. In my school, we call it shushi, or the subject line. It's the main line from which every other piece that's put into the arrangement is measured. And this particular arrangement is called Hana Isho. It is a basic, it's the big one you would do in your first class in the Ohara school. Hana Isho, the rising form. And it just kind of rises up with this line. And it this piece, this branch could be twice the width of this. I've made it a little shorter, twice the width of this bowl, and including the height, which would make it really tall. And this, it depends on your branch. In this branch just lend itself to being a little shorter. So that's why I made it that way. in Japan, Kado, they often refer to Ikebana as Kado, K-A-D-O, which means way of the flower. So it can be, there's a lot of reverence for Ikebana as an art, as a path to use in your day-to-day life. And they also like to use, or you will find this in arrangements, every part of the life cycle of a flower, or like iris. In the spring, when you make an arrangement, you might use the bud or these beautiful green spears of the leaves of the iris. In the fall, you might use the withering, kind of yellowing leaves and a pod, the little brown pod that develops at the top of the iris. So the life cycle is appreciated. And I think part of the Buddhism that has still we get in Ikebana is impermanence. That's an important principle in Buddhism, and of course we all know impermanence. We're here now, we die, but that all living things change and wither and die. And that's appreciated, that can be appreciated in an arrangement that may have something that's withering. And it's usually has to do with the season, as the fall or the winter season. So that's a little, I don't mean to get too philosophical, but now we're going to do this Hana Isho rising, the rising form. And this is quince from my garden. And I brought this in, it's a piece that I had that I forced because, it took it a while to come out. It had little pink buds on it. And when the buds open inside, the flower is white. And I always find that interesting. So, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't know very much about roses, so it was a real education. I don't use them too often. So, what? I mean, I went to Coleman Brothers and got, he was very helpful to me, but they tend to open so quickly. Now, this quince, the same bush, but it opened outside. And it's just so beautiful. So I wanted to use both aspects of this quince. The one that opened inside, the one that opened outside with this beautiful peachy pink. And I thought these roses went really beautiful with that peachy pink. Those beautiful roses. So the problem with roses is that they open so fast. I got them yesterday and they... Right, yes, correct. It's never white outside. It must have something to do with the sun or some enzymes or something. I really don't know, but I find it so interesting. And I've done arrangements with, kind of tall arrangements with the big branches of white and the big branches of the pink, and I think that's really effective. Pardon? UV. The UV, well, yeah, it could be. I haven't.
There are some roses that are a darker color in more direct light, like double delight.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because I had not really done any research, but I've noticed it. So now with this arrangement, Hana Isho, the rising form, we want to place our main line, and then we want to place a focus flower or object or the kakushi. And this kakushi is reaching out to you. It's going to be at the very front. I have to make sure it's looking up to the sun. And it's on the very front of this. Did I show you the Kenzon? I didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have brought it. Well, you'll see it. It's a pin. What do they call them? Pin flower. It's like a flower holder, pin cushion type, frogs, some people call them. Well, these are made in Japan, and they're lead. You don't want to prick your finger on it, but the lead ones are really good. And it has a little rubber around the bottom of it so that it doesn't scratch your ceramic container. And it stays in place. So this, and also the flowers in the winter are placed towards the front of the container. Water is a really important element in an Ikebana arrangement in a low bowl. But in the winter, it's very cooling in the summer to see this beautiful, reflective, cool water. But in the winter, you want it, you don't want to see it so much because it's a little too chilly. So as the season progresses, in summer, you'll have your flowers back here, but we keep them in front in the winter. So this focus flower object, kakushi, is about half the length of this main line. So this is our second line. And these are the only two. Now, Ikebana is full of guidelines and rules, but these are the only two required placement for this arrangement. But we want to put more in, but if everything that we put in, we want to keep on a center line in the Kenzon. So I think with this rose, I want to use some of this beautiful quince that is kind of pinkish. And I can put one in the back. And one in the front. And we kind of like for things to have a little tilt towards the front, because these are not to be centerpieces. These were meant to be in a tokonoma, a niche, or against the wall, that kind of thing. They just wouldn't work on your coffee table or your dining room table.
So is there a name for the secondary pieces?
No, there is, but not in this particular arrangement, because it's not really, we just call them fillers. And shukanshi, fillers. And this one is partially white and partially pink, so that might fit in here. And I'm learning that although this Hana Isho arrangement is considered very basic, and one of the first ones you learn, it's also very advanced. It gets more, I saw the headmaster of the O'Hara School on a Zoom program the other night, and he was doing this very elaborate thing with magnolia branch, and then he says it's Hana Isho, and I'm thinking, oh, really? And but it can get very advanced. So, and then what I thought, because oftentimes this arrangement is described as being having a concept or an idea that you want to get across, and I'm thinking I'd like to have a little bit of a surprise element in this arrangement. So I'm going to put a flower in the back. And usually the lower flower is the one that's a little more open. it kind of represents, these look the same, but yesterday. This is today, like this is supposed to be perfectly open. This is lower flower yesterday. It's kind of spent, basically. Not totally spent, but it's on its way out. And then if we had a taller one in here, it would be a bud. And the bud represents the future. So that's one way of thinking. Now see, this is very simple, but we need to add some greenery. This foliage on the is just beautiful rose foliage. I think it really is nice. Yeah, from the florist. But sometimes, like, we'll get it from the wholesaler, and they'll be mangled and horrible. You have to just strip them. But this arrangement, the rising form, you want greenery to ground it. So we have some greenery, and you also want to have a little piece that integrates the container or suiban with the arrangement. And so I'm going to put a little bit of fern here to kind of come out. And I also think it needs a little something. Now, I don't want to put fern like this so that it's straight facing you, but turned a little. And it gives it a bit of a layered look, and it also gives it a little depth. Well, that's not. And for ferns, you really need to you put. There's the little stems are so thin that we have to put them in like a little piece of chrysanthemum stem that holds it together. There may be other stems that do that too, but I like to use chrysanthemum stem. Okay, so this gives us, this is all I'm going to put in here. I could use another little piece of quince. The quince is so beautiful. It lends itself because there are openings, there's space, and we want to have space between the branches and the flowers. We want a pathway for a breeze or a butterfly. When I do a class, with school kids, I say, now can a butterfly go through there? And I take that out. And we want this, grounded, integrating the container, space, everything. If you look at this from the side, everything is pretty much placed in the center, but it comes out at different angles and with different heights. And that creates movement in your arrangement. The different angles, the different heights, it also creates depth. And let's see, we were talking about balance. So, creating asymmetry is important. One side does not look exactly like the other side in Ikebana. How do we have balance? Because harmony and balance is important. Well, I think we do that with the angling and the different heights. And it's also, there are a lot of these rules or guidelines, but there's self-expression. Because if everybody in this room had the same 3 flowers or the same branch material, the same container, you'd have they would all be different arrangements. And that's one of the beauties I really enjoy, because you cannot discount the self-expression. You're going to make choices. This branch or this flower, and they're all going to be different. A little different shape to them. So anyway, that's Hana Isho, and I don't know if this will work because we're kind of down low, but sometimes it helps to see to have this behind, rather than to be looking at me. So, whoops, this is the center. Okay. Oh, thank you. What?
It does make a considerable difference.
Doesn't it make, yeah. I mean, not just for photography, but just to look at it, to see the arrangement. Okay, I'm going to move that one, and then we'll do another one. Well, let's see. I think I can do it. I'll just do it really slowly. Thank you. And I didn't put as much water as I would if I were at home. I forgot I had another really nice bamboo mat I was going to bring, and of course I forgot that. It's probably in my dining room. Okay, now this is a Ikebana water reflecting arrangement, and this is one of my favorite arrangements. I do it in the winter. It's really, it's a wonderful one for the summer or the spring when you want to see more water. And I can see the reflection. This branch comes over and is reflected in the water. The container itself is called Oribe. It's a modern version of a kind of a folk stoneware that became popular in I think it was the 1600s in Japan. And they put little, that either have geometric paintings on it or little folk scenes of nature, and it's irregular. And this kind of irregular in shape, became popular during tea ceremony, where a kind of a rustic irregularity was really appreciated in your tea cups and tea bowls. So this is one of my favorite containers. But it's a modern. It's from Japan, but it's, just sort of modeled after an older folk version. So again, I've taken this. Actually, this came out of my neighbor's yard because my forsythia is still very tight. And, this presents an interesting conundrum because I had this piece. Should I use this piece? I could trim it. That's just beginning to bloom, or this piece, which is really exuberant. And so when I was trying to decide, I thought, well, why not use the exuberant one? Forsythia, it blooms one day and the next day it drops. But because of the cold temperatures, it stayed intact really well. And I decided to use the exuberant one, just subjective. But this line, see this main line is so important. This is what we base our whole arrangement on. And I could trim this more. I've trimmed it quite a bit, and I've taken some of these little, I don't know if you all can see with this over here. Maybe I can, I'm sorry, I hadn't thought about that. These ladies. Can you see it now? Okay. So, these things do take up a lot of space. But the whole idea of this is to reflect over the water and to come a little bit towards the person. So when I'm standing here, this tip is coming a little bit towards my shoulder. Now, this is a specific kind of arrangement, and that's Ikebana. You're going to have 5 placements of this branch material. So you were asking me about the names of the secondary branch is a fukushi, and it's going to do some balancing. This one comes way over here. Okay, this one, the secondary, is going to be behind it and come a little forward, but it balances this a little bit, because this one is, you know, everything's going in this direction. This brings you a little bit over here. And then we're going to have 2 little pieces that accentuate this long piece. And these are fillers. They're called shukanshi. And they will go in the direction of the main line, the shushi. No. And this particular one is going to come over the edge and integrate the container into the arrangement. Now, I have one here that just has a couple of little blooms on it and still has lots of buds. And see, that's a wonderful shape. So I wanted to use that. It's not exuberant, but it's sort of indicating the future. And if this is in your home, it'll be out in a few days. So, of course, the other ones will probably have dropped. So I'm placing that, and I may change it, but right here, and let it curve in a little bit. I could make that a little lower. You know, there's just all kinds of subjective decisions you can make. But, so this is really looking like spring. And next we have the flowers, the roses. More of these beautiful roses that are opening. I'm just going to put them on the table. Now, these colors. This is something I really had to get used to. Pink and yellow. I did not like it at all. The Japanese love pink and yellow together. And so, you know, in the spring, I mean, you got all these pink and yellow. And so, but now I really like it. I really like it a lot. And these roses even have a little bit of yellow on them. So I think that's quite lovely. Now, generally in Ikebana, we use 3 flowers. And they're going to reach out let's see. They come out at about this one, which is the object, or the kakushi, comes out at about a 50-degree angle in this direction, the opposite direction of that. Now, that's looking a little long, and it's supposed to be half. Oh, I think that's too long. We like to cut in water. I cut these at home in water because it keeps the apparatus in the flower that needs to absorb water open. And I want to make sure it's looking up. See, these things take time. You know, you can't just stick them in there. So, and I want it to come out about 50 degrees, this direction. Again, beautiful foliage. But, and we have our yesterday flower, which I'm going to place below. Another thing about Ikebana arrangements is we're creating triangles, scalene triangles. Started off very interested in Japanese culture. I've never been a member of a garden club or, that sort of thing. And so, the reflection of the Buddhist principles in Ikebana and Japanese culture, their reverence for nature, all those things kind of came together for me. And I thought, I'd like to study Ikebana, and it works for me. It just kind of frames my life in a way. Pardon me? You've never had any
experience Chinese?
Yeah, well, Japanese is very different culture. Yeah, and but I had taken a martial art for a number of years when I was living in San Francisco, Aikido, and that has, there are a lot of the same principles that still, are expressed in these other arts. And so this is the Moribana, and it's basically the way it's supposed to be. And if you don't like pink and yellow together, you're going to be really disappointed. So, but let me put this behind. But that's an interesting question. It is, some people, I have friends that are just like flowers, and they wanted to learn to do Ikebana arrangements, but they don't really have an interest in the culture. But to me, it came from the culture, interest in the culture. So, see that? Yeah, that's right, because it's long. Now, this one is, I just wanted you to see, this is called free expression. And as you can see, I like very basic containers, but this one was made by one of our members, Helena Aruka, who's a teacher, but she's also a ceramicist. And in a free, you don't need any guidelines. You don't need to, have a kaku and a main line or anything. You probably will, but this is pure seasonality. These beautiful camellias, which are starting to wilt, but winter Virginia pine, and a fallen branch, which is covered with lichens from a dying live oak tree. And I just thought that, to let you know that there is a free expression type of arrangement that we do. So, and here's a little dipper for getting all the little pieces out, which I never do. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to, I don't know how long, if you all take time for questions, but, oh, okay. John.
In rose arranging, I don't know much about the ARS, American Rose Society has flower competitions, arranging competitions. And the rose always has to be the focal point, which I see here you have done that. You made the rose the focal point. So this would actually, you could enter that into a
Competition.
Rose Society competition.
That's interesting. Well,
And if you want to not win,
put.
in an arrangement competition, just make it that your rose is not focal.
Okay.
But shoe sheet, is that ever the focus? Because it's not in the leaves.
Well, it depends. The focus in an O'Hara arrangement is always your flower that's reaching out. And now, I use the word focus. That's not always true. It could be this. I mean, it could be this a branch that's tall because it's rising up. So it's sort of in the eye of the beholder, I guess. I mean, that would be what I would say. But usually the flower is what catches your eye, and it is reaching out to you.
But you never put the flower vertically.
Oh, yeah, you could. Yeah, like liatris or a tall kind of flower. I mean, you could even have a rose as your main line. And, you know, and this, your object might be leaves, Solomon's seal or something that's really pretty, you know. Yeah, so there are all variations like that you could. That's a good question, though. Yeah, this can be a flower. This would be hard to make it a flower, but I think I had to do that in a class one time. But I used one of those exotic things from Australia, safari, I think. I didn't like it very much. But one thing you said, too, that I wanted to, is Ikebana, we never do competition. We do exhibitions, but it's not like a garden club where you do first place, second place, and all that. It's more, you know, just you. Yeah. So, hi.
The one with the forsythia, before you put the roses in, I thought, oh, isn't that lovely? And I thought that was going to be it. But you would consider that incomplete?
Well, yeah, according to the, I feel that way all the time when I see people demonstrating. I think, oh, stop, it's so pretty the way it is, you know. But to demonstrate this particular Moribana arrangement, we need the flowers. Maybe just two, or maybe even one. You know, if it's a big chrysanthemum or a big rose, you know, maybe you don't need the three. But this is traditionally the way that it is displayed. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Do you ever add accessories to your arrangements?
I don't. You mean like little frogs and things? Little ceramic pieces. You can't. Yeah, John was asking me.
I was going to figurine with a young lady, and I was going to try to use that in there on mine.
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, if that's what you want to do. There is a school called Chico School of Ikebana, and they tell a little story with theirs. They'll have like something like this and have on the board a little you know, figurine or something. And at home, I always like to have a little frog or something kind of around, you know, kind of looking at it. So yeah, that's fun to play around with. But traditionally, you know, we don't really do that, except in that particular school. We do a board called Mona of fruits or vegetables, maybe, and then a little flower in a cup kenzan. But so there are different, you know, little creative things you can do. So yeah.
The containers that you use have to be a certain type, certain size,
Not really. When you're taking like a class, this is a good one to have, a basic one. But you could use something that you have in your home, you know. The problem is you get hooked on these things, you know, and we have ways and means, you know, we get these from Japan, these beautiful containers, and I mean, you see those, oh, I've got to have that, and, you know, that's what happens. We also, at our meetings, have potters, local potters, who make things that can be used for Ikebana. And you get hooked on that too. So But I've been pretty good. I like basic. I don't think there's anything prettier than a basic black. I mean, some people find it boring. I think it's really interesting.
It goes with everything.
Yeah, it goes with anything, and it's a 12-inch diameter. It's a great one to take to a class. So, but you can use, people bring all kinds of things that they have in their homes. But if you're taking a specific class, doing a specific kind of arrangement, you may need to bring a specific kind of container. So an oval or a round or rectangular, you know, but usually that's a good question though, yeah.
Thrift shops are great places to find stuff.
Thrift shop, yeah, that's true.
I was going to suggest yard sale season is coming up very soon.
Yard sale.
Yard sale season.
Oh, yard sale, yes. Yeah, you can find things.
Also, I can see where we can do some of this with, this is a good way, I can see us, some of us have shrub roses that have small cluster flowers. If they would prune that a little bit, they would do well with a hybrid key in the spring.
You mean like spray?
A spray?
Yeah, cluster spray, something like Flower Girl or Ballerina.
I've seen Love's Magic, Lysol.
I'm sorry, what?
I've seen the hybrid tea, Love's Magic, Lysol.
Ah.
It's a very big.
Very big?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I've seen it in
Oh, sorry.
This kid's got.
I'm not supposed to move. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So, oh, yes. These Kenzons, these frogs, well, you can find them online. You can do Amazon. These really good ones, get one from Japan though. I mean, these are ones that I've bought through our club.
I've seen them at Strangers. I think so. I'm not sure.
Go look at on Amazon. They have them, I think, for about
in antique stores.
in antique stores.
The spikes are different or something? That's what the little spikes,
Yeah.
It holds the flower better.
what makes them better from Japan? The sharper?
Heavier.
Basket on the bottom.
Heavier. They have some that have longer needles that are really good for grasses and holding grasses and, you know, things that have a little weaker stem to them. I don't have one, but I'd like to have it. But the weight of a lead is sometimes this, and also they're more closer together. The little spikes are closer together, but they're more expensive. Oh, I'm done. I was busy with other things.
More time.
Yeah, family, you know, I don't know. I just said, I want to do that when I retire. I just felt like it would take dough. It's a way, you know, it's going to take, and not just the time that you spend cutting flowers and putting them in, you know, it's big. It's taking classes, it's reading, it's, you know, yeah. So,
Process of doing it.
yeah, it's a real process of kind of settling into it. Not that, we have one lady that has, our current president has 3 children and, you know, all these things, but she doesn't get a chance to do much Ikebana. She's administrating. Did you have another question? Oh, but yeah, I just. How long does it take? I mean, like these arrangements, I mean, it takes, you've got to decide what you want to use, you know, and then you got to see if they have it, the floor, you know, the right color to go with your line material. We call this line material. And then you know, practice, put it together at home. Does it work, you know? And then you say, well, I'm going to make a substitution or something. You know, it can take a while. But then you can just, sometimes you just sit and do an arrangement. It just
Comes out perfect.
It just comes out. It's hard to say. It really is. So,
Young lady, this is not much, but we appreciate you.
oh, well, thank you. Well,
And
I,
please invite some of the other ones to come to the Rose Society here.